I knew for $10 I could buy all the vegetables I could eat in a weekend, but I wanted to have that experience of growing from the dirt to the plate and have understood how much work it really is. So in 2003, I planted the first tic-tac-toe potager because it had to be a game for me. And this is our potager, which is planted with a whole slew of seasonal vegetables which will roll all through the year, right into winter with cabbages and cauliflowers and garlics and things like that. But we're just at that baby stage. You can see we're getting some of our first tomatoes are coming up. So this was my baby book that I created in 2003 for the potager carré, or the square potager. A potiron, which is a butternut squash at its infant stage, and this is about the same size that they were. A pumpkin, a big pumpkin starting with the flower, of course. Well, I didn't know any of these things. I'd never had a garden before. I grew up in Hawaii, so I knew about pineapples. So these were all of the things that we started to produce, and we got wheelbarrows full of tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, and this was the first summer in the garden. Since then, I've learned that it's a lot of work growing food, and although I keep a garden, I also really like to use my producers because it's a way of honoring how much work they do every day, year in and year out, all through the seasons, where for me it's a bit of a game. These long pepper-looking tomatoes, they're called the cornu d'Inde, from the Andes, horn of the Andes. And then I've tried to plant things that people perhaps who come to the cooking school aren't so familiar with in the ground. So celery root, celeriac, which people know gastronomically is delicious, but don't really know how it's grown. And this is a celery root plant growing. The bulb is underground. This tastes like celery leaf, looks like a celery leaf, but there's no real stalks. So it's a different animal from branch celery. In rotating the tic-tac-toe squares, we try to put in legumes because they build up the soil. And over here, that I'm most proud of is we're actually growing the tarbay bean, and you can see the bean that was planted has sprouted a root and leaves. The bean is still on it in this case, and then they're going to grow up their vines. They're a vine bean, and these are the traditional beans that cassoulet is made from. This year, all the compost made in this section will stay in this section. Next year, we'll put it into the next section, sort of just like rotating chickens in a farm. This is sort of the blight of the garden right now, is this square, but it's my idea to start doing a no-till method, which I think really will work in this heavy clay soil. It's basically to build a lasagna of mulch on top of the soil, and even the weeds will all get folded in, and we'll put down a layer, lots of layers, so cardboard, and I've got a whole slew of boxes to put on here. Then we'll put manure, a big layer of straw over that. So we actually end up with about this much mulch over the soil, and then you just work down into the mulch with a bit of compost, letting the plants grow down and find the soil. This is our tea garden, and it's tea in the sense of tisane. I wanted people to be able to come and experience really plucking something off of a bush, putting it in a glass and drinking it. I planted these particular roses. They're called Chrysler Imperials because they're very, very deep perfume, and the actual petal, which is like velour, is very thick. So when you make confiture or jam, you put these petals in hot sugar syrup. They'll make a little berry, and we have rose petal jam from that, and it's quite fragrant. Well, every French meal begins with an aperitif, and the best way to get people excited about aperitifs is to start a game of pétanque or boule, and this is just like a giant game of marbles. So the goal is to get to that red ball. I hit it, but I didn't get close to it.